Namaste. The divine in me bows before the divine in each one of you. I want to welcome you to another video in the series of Integrating the Sacred, where we meditate on the gospel for the day. And by meditating on the gospel, we avail ourselves to God's light and love, because God wants to fill us with light and love. Now, I'm going to say as an introduction, today's gospel is very, very challenging. It's where Jesus goes into the temple and clears the temple. You know, Jesus is referred to as the Prince of Peace. He told people to turn the other cheek, and yet we see this strong, fierce reaction of Jesus. Is he just losing it, or is something else going on? And at a deeper level, what we're really talking about today is a healthy expression of righteous anger. And it's so relevant for our culture today because there's so much going on in the name of righteous anger that isn't righteous anger at all. But having said all that, let me jump into today's gospel. And Jesus and his disciples came into Jerusalem. And entering the temple, Jesus began to throw out those selling and buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the moneychangers and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he did not permit anyone to carry a container, a purse, in the temple. And he taught and said to them, "Has it not been written that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a robber's den." So again, this gospel reading is very relevant for our day and age. Let me give some qualifications. People will say to me after hearing this gospel, "What's going on? Jesus is the Prince of Peace," as I said before. What we've done in our culture is we've domesticated love. We've reduced love to being nice. God's love is that force that will do whatever it takes to transform a situation, to evolve a situation. If sweetness and kindness and gentleness will evolve a situation, that's how God will show up. If fierceness, strength is needed to evolve a situation, that's how God will show up. Again, we've reduced love to niceness. And I want to make this very clear. Niceness has nothing to do with spirituality. Niceness is rooted in the egoic personality. People that are exceedingly nice, they're really just wanting people to like them and love them. Now, kindness comes from the soul and it comes from God. Gentleness comes from the soul and from God. Niceness is something other. So one way of reading the gospel today is that we have to get beyond this domestication of God, this domestication of love. God is love. And love always serves the highest good, and love will do whatever it takes to bring about the highest good. Having said that, let me read something from Yogananda, because he's capturing the essence of true righteous anger. Jesus, and he's commenting on this gospel, Jesus responded to an untenable situation, an unacceptable situation, not from an emotional compulsion to wrath. Jesus wasn't being emotionally reactive. He wasn't even losing his temper, but from a divine, righteous indignation in reverence to the immanence of God in his holy place of worship. Inwardly, Jesus did not succumb to anger. Great sons and daughters of God possess the qualities and attributes of an ever tranquil spirit. So we got to get really clear. Righteous anger is not reactivity. It is not losing one's temper. It's something far deeper. Let me give you a real everyday example that I think will be helpful. My oldest son, Nick, he's now 45. When he was 16 and learning to drive, it was a Sunday afternoon. And he said to me, Dad, can we go for a drive? Meaning, can I drive? I said, sure, go out and start the car and I'll be out in a minute. And as I was coming out the front door, he was pulling out of the driveway and I could see a car coming and I could see that he didn't see the car. And I could see that if I didn't intervene, there was going to be an accident. I didn't speak with a gentle and soft voice. I said, Nick. I caught his attention. He stopped. He saw the car go by. He rolled down his window and said, thank you, Dad. Now, if you didn't know the situation in the context, you would have said I was angry. No, I was being fierce. Again, fierceness is one of the manifestations of God's love that works not to punish, but to set things right. Let me say it this way. We read, particularly in the Old Testament, the Jewish scriptures, the anger of God. The anger of God isn't God losing his or her temper. It isn't God punishing us. It is the love of God and the passion of God to want to set things right for everyone. All right? So again, love is that force that serves our highest good and will do whatever it takes to bring about our highest good. So let me break this down for what it means for us in our everyday spirituality, how we integrate this spirit of passionate love, fierce love, righteous love into our own lives, for ourselves and for others. First of all, and I'm really repeating what I said before, but I want to give a story to capture it. Being a spiritual person isn't being spineless. I love a line from Yogananda. He said, when it comes to principle, be as strong as thunder. But when it comes to human frailty, be as gentle as a flower. All right, so being spiritual isn't being spineless. It isn't letting people walk all over us. It is standing up for ourselves in the truth. And I'll share with you a parable that I've heard that I think is really, really wonderful. A spiritual teacher says, it's from India. A spiritual teacher is going through a town and he's preaching to the people, teaching them about the Vedas, and everybody's giving their hearts to God. And there's a poisonous snake who's listening. He says to the teacher, I want conscious contact with God too. What do I need to do? And the teacher said, well, the first thing, you have to stop biting people and poisoning them. The snake said, okay. Well, a year passes, the teacher comes back and he sees the snake, and the snake is beaten and bruised and half dead. And the teacher said, what happened? And the snake said, well, you told me not to bite anybody. And the teacher said, yes, but I didn't tell you not to hiss. Translation. We don't have to let people walk all over us. We don't have to be victims. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to take care of ourselves. So that's one aspect of righteous love, fierce love, giving ourselves permission to say no, to set boundaries, and to be fierce sometimes. The second piece, again, I'm just taking my cues here from Yogananda, is that Jesus wasn't being reactive in the temple. He was coming from a place of calmness, but also wisdom and truth. What we've done in our culture, we've separated truth from love. That love is always accepting what people do, supporting what people do. Remember the saying, it came from transactional analysis, a type of counseling back in the 1970s and 80s. I'm okay, you're okay. Well, sometimes I'm not okay. Sometimes we're not okay. Sometimes we do things that are damaging to us and other people. And we need to hear the truth. Love without truth is not love. Love always serves the highest good of ourselves and the other person. But to know what that highest good is, we have to have a sense of truth. You've heard me say this before. Love and truth are the flip sides of the same coin, and you can't have one without the other. I'll give you another example. When I was 16 or 17, living with my foster family, and they're a wonderful family. I'm still close to them to this day. They're in their late 80s. But I did something wrong. And in a kind of superficial way, I just said, I'm sorry. And assuming that he was a good Catholic Christian man, he would say, you're forgiven. Well, I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, sorry didn't do it. You did it. Take responsibility for it. He was speaking truth. He saw through my superficial apology, and with fierceness, but with love, he challenged me to be a better person. So if we're going to act from this place of righteous anger, we have to know what is true and what's not true. And I'll tell you a little pet peeve I have. And I hear it from both sides of the political aisle. Okay. The left will completely critique the right, but not look or own their own shadows. And the right will completely critique and criticize the left, but not look at their own shadows. I'll say it this way. It's not a political statement, it's common sense. The left needs the right, and the right needs the left, or else they'll both run off their separate cliffs. So if we are moved to act with righteous anger, we have to make sure that we know right from wrong and that we're looking at our own shadow. There's a wonderful quote from Jesus where he said, why take the speck out of your brother's eye, your sister's eye, when you have a whole beam of wood in your own eye? All right? We have to make sure that we're not coming from some egoic place. We have to make sure that we're not projecting our shadow on the other person. We have to make sure that we know our own limitations and faults before we point out someone else's. The third thing I want to say is that we have to be coming from love. If our motivation is to condemn, that's not righteous anger. If our motivation is to hurt, that's not righteous anger. Our motivation has to be love. In the gospel, Jesus was coming from a place of love. He wanted that temple to be filled with God's loving presence. He had to be fierce to make that happen, but he was trying to reestablish truth, beauty, goodness, God's loving presence. So we always have to be motivated by love, and love is serving the highest good of the other person. I think Dr. Martin Luther King sums this piece up with brilliance. He said, the goal is to invite the wayward brother and sister back into the beloved community. If our goal is not to do that, if our goal is not reconciliation, if our goal is not communion with the wayward brother or sister, then we're not coming from a place of righteous anger. That righteous anger is, again, the love of God working through us to restore justice, to bring peace back, to bring harmony back into our relationships and into the human race. If we're going to act with righteous anger, we really have to know ourselves very well. And I'll throw this point out before I close, one more point. If you think that you are being motivated to express yourself with righteous anger, two other things I want to throw in quickly. Go to a spiritual mentor, go to a spiritual guide, and check it out. There may be a blind spot that you're not seeing, or that spiritual guide, that spiritual director may help you to express it in the best possible way. The other piece is, if you're going to act with righteous anger, then you have to be part of the problem. There's a dear, dear man in the Assisi Institute who was very upset about everything that was going on in Gaza at the height of the war. And he could have pointed fingers and he could have done a lot of unrighteous anger. But what he did was so beautiful. He organized a fast in the Institute, asking everybody for a week straight to fast for peace. He was becoming part of the solution. He wasn't adding to the vitriolic anger that is so prevalent in our culture. I'll close with this thought. God has been so patient with me. God has been so merciful with me, and I have needed God to be patient and merciful. There are times as a spiritual teacher, I have to speak challenging words to people. I have to say things sometimes with some fierceness, but I always try to do it from that place of love, that God has been merciful to me. And I speak this truth not out of self-righteousness and not out of anger, but out of love. When we come from love and truth, then what we do ultimately heals and restores. It doesn't destroy. God bless you.